Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how I make my wooden apple boxes on the lathe. Here's one of the blanks that we'll be starting with. Let's get stuck in. For any sort of box turning on the lathe, planning is very critical. I'll show you here on this whiteboard how I go about making these boxes. So start out with about a 3-inch blank. Probably lose about 1/4 inch to the tenon, and then if we have a circle about 3 inches in diameter, something like that will be the bottom half of our apple. So because we need room for the tooling to come in, you can just say that that's about 3/8 of an inch extra of waste. So here will be the joint, and then another 1/4 inch or so for a tenon. It's going to be what holds the lid and the bottom of the box together. And then we have another 1/4 inch that we're losing, just separating the two pieces together, separating them apart. And then our other semicircle here. And then the same, we'll probably lose 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch of material, and then another 1/4 inch for the tenon. So that right there is about how we're going to be getting this apple out of this piece of wood. So for a 3-inch apple, which this blank that we're starting with is about 3 inches in diameter, need about a 5.5, 6-inch blank. So this mounted between centers on the lathe here. So now let's duplicate the layout that we had on the whiteboard on this piece. So say our tenon starts there, and then 1/4 inch, 3/8 or so of waste. Then we want, this is about a 3-inch radius, 1.5 inch or so. Sorry, 3-inch diameter, 1.5 inch radius. Here's our tenon, so this is the bottom of the box. And then this is our waste, we'll be parting it off. This is the bottom of the box. And then the top of the box, have another 1.5 inch. And then the same waste, and then the tenon. So that's about all we need for this one box. I'll start by forming the tenon here on this end. Part it off and put it in the chuck. Can also be helpful because I'm going to get another apple out of this piece just while it's between centers. I'm going to put a tenon on this side too so I can put it in the chuck. So we can put our tenon on this side here, then we can separate these pieces off and start working on the bottom. Next thing I want to do is start thinking about the outside geometry of the apple. So you need to remember I have this 1/4 inch or so for the tenon. I'm just going to set that line in with a skew. Something like that, so I know what I have to work with. From here, I'm just going to start rounding it out with a spindle gouge, trying to get a nice even semicircle. It's an apple, it's an organic shape, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Looking pretty good, still a little rough. Need to take the diameter down a little bit. That's about as far as I want to go before I start working on hollowing the inside. So just take a little bit more off, get some of these marks out. Not perfect, but close enough for now. So hollowing this out, pull the tailstock off. I do like for these to be as thin as possible. It is a functional item and this is a softwood, so it can't be too thin, but at least want it to be as elegant as possible. Fresh edge on the scraper. Let's go for a finishing cut. Very nice. At this point, this is the last time I want to touch the interior, so from the tenon, just going to round over these edges a little bit so it's less sharp and fragile, and then sand and finish the inside. Okay, let's spread this off. Sand this outside surface a little bit to be able to refine the bottom in a later step, but this is probably about as good as it's going to get, so finish sanding this and then you can finish this whole box. My go-to finish for this sort of thing on the lathe is usually just a little bit of walnut oil, some beeswax. For the shine, some beeswax. Very shiny. Can refine this bottom a little bit later. Set this aside, start working on the top. This one, I'm going to start hollowing first so we can get the mortise that this tenon is going to go in. So it's just a little eyeball, see where about we need to be. And let's just remove a little bit of this material. Going to slowly start widening this out until this just barely fits on. Right now, this is exactly the fit we're looking for. So now, with this tight on here, we can very, very carefully clean up this bottom. Okay, now that's done. Start shaping this top half on the outside to match the bottom. Same process as before with the bottom. It's also about as far as I'll take it before I want to hollow out the inside. But I do want to sand this outside first while this is on. That way we can sand them together and they'll be nice and perfectly blended. I'd also like to just put a little shadow line between them. Makes them easy to come apart too. Touch up the finish on this bottom half a little bit. It's okay if a little bit gets onto the top too. See how well they blend together. This is a very snug fit, more snug than we want it to be in the end. So I'm just going to very, very carefully take a little bit off this tenon. Sorry, this mortise wall. And we can finish hollowing this out. It's pretty good. Some oil and wax on there, it should loosen up just enough. On this top half here, I also left this tiny little nub in the middle, because at the top of an apple it curves in where you have the stem come in. Just to try and keep this top wall as thin as possible, I'd like to have a little bit of extra material here, just to make sure I don't drill all the way through when it comes to installing the stem. So, time for a little sanding and finishing on this inside of the lid. Now this is by the longest shot, the scariest part, because now I need to finish turning this outside, which means I have to put this finished mortise now on the chuck. It's a very thin wall, so it is very delicate. Use some paper towel to protect it. Make sure that's pressed on solidly, and very, very carefully expand the jaws into the mortise. Now this is not the most solid connection in the world, as you might imagine. So at this point, you're gonna have to be taking very, very gentle, very careful cuts. All of my pressure when cutting is going to be going this way to keep it into the chuck. If I try and do any cutting that's pushing this way, it's probably just going to pop right off the jaws. I'll have to start over. Still a few lines in there I want to sand out. The last thing we need to do, drill out this hole for the stem. I have the hole drilled in the top here. Just did that on the drill press off camera. So now I like to use a contrasting material for the stem. Just have this piece of walnut here. Stick it in the vise, chuck, whatever it's called. Here's our stem. So I like to grind a little taper on it, makes it look a little bit more natural. Let's see how they all look together. Make sure the grain lines up. Here's our apple. Just gonna glue this in, let that set up for a little while, and then put some finish on here, clean it up, and it should be ready to go. Let's make a few more of them. Well, here we are a little while later. As you see, we've made a few more. I really enjoy making these apples. I hope that you enjoyed watching me make them. If you did enjoy, I'd like to invite you to like and subscribe to my channel. Please visit my Instagram page as well at DCG Woodworks. Some of these apples will be going up for sale on my Etsy page, also DCG Woodworks. There'll be a link in the description. I invite you also to check those out as well. I hope that you enjoyed. Have a good rest of your day. I'll see you on the next one.